Oh man, we are back. Sorry about the delay in videos. I've been a little bit busy with work recently, but there is some good news. So recently, Regulation I was announced. This format's going to obviously be structured differently than Regulation G, just because now you have access to 2 restricted Pokemon rather than 1. This is what has been seen in like prior years as opposed to Regulation G. Like you saw it in 2022, 2019, and then 2016 with Pokemon. So there was like typically in the past dual restricted formats that was the 3rd year in the game, but then like this, I don't know, like the last like year or two, it's been a little wonky with how formats have been because they've been going like back and forth between like multiple things, but it's whatever. So the thing is, I've been playing a little bit of Regulation I myself. I just recently hit top 10 on Pokemon Showdown with the team that you guys see. Well, actually not this team that you see in front of you, but it was another version of this team, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, right now I might actually have fallen a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, I'm at 16th now. But that's whatever. It's fine. The thing is about dual restricted formats, which I think is important to note, is that I don't necessarily believe in restricted, or at least these duo restricted formats, that there is one definitive, like, strongest core out there. And that's just seen, like, even in the prior formats, not necessarily the core that people think is the best ends up winning. This was seen back in like 2016. A lot of people thought Groudon Xerneas was going to win, and then that did not end up winning at all. In fact, it didn't even make the finals of that format. It was actually like dual primal, where it was Groudon Kyogre, and then the team that won was Rayquaza Kyogre. Not to say that those cores were like off people's radar. They were popular all year, but no one really expected them to beat out Groudon Xerneas. 2019 was also the same way. Like, people thought Groudon Xerneas, Rayquaza Xerneas, and then Rayquaza Kyogre were the 3 best restricted cores, and then the team that ended up winning was a Groudon Lunala team, which no one really had on their radar. So the thing is to say that there's like a best core or combination of restricted Pokemon, I think that's just like not necessarily true in the premise of it. I think there's actually a lot of really good cores that you could end up running, and then the person who ends up winning is actually one that runs their core the best. Now, obviously, you can't just slap together whatever 2 Pokemon and expect it to work. Like, you can't put together Rayquaza and Kyurem Black and then expect your team to have success. Just because those 2 Pokemon, not only is there a gap between their strength and some of the top tier Pokemon, but also together they don't pair nicely. So you need 2 restricteds that pair together very well and cover each other's weaknesses. And then also, the other thing you want to keep in mind is when you do make these restricted cores, typically you want to have a rule where one of the restricteds is a physical attacker and then one is a special attacker, or have 2 special attackers on the team. Occasionally you can get away with 2 physical attacking restricteds, but that could be a problem if you do run into Intimidate teams, so that is something to keep in mind. But based on what I've seen on ladder and just like playing around, there's actually a lot of like really, really good combinations that we could talk about. These are like all the teams I was testing out. So I think the first one I want to talk about, which is probably going to be the most popular core, is Zamazenta and then Calyrex-Shadow. This core, it's pretty nice. They actually cover each other's weaknesses like very well. Zamazenta obviously can't hit ghost types, which Calyrex-Shadow can with Astral Barrage. Zamazenta also does a nice job at guarding Calyrex, because Calyrex, like, its defenses aren't bad, but because its typing is so poor, it could kind of just get knocked out by like pretty common things. So having Y-Guard just to take away spread options into it is very nice as well. And then Zamazenta can just allow Calyrex-Shadow to set up for a turn. The other thing is, with Calyrex-Shadow threatening to set up with like a nasty plot, it does also make your opponents feel obligated to kind of double into it, so you could protect it turn 1 and then just attack and do a body press with Zamazenta on a turn. We're going to go through these combinations really, really quick, so that was one of them that I wanted to mention. So let me just cross it off the list, because I made a big one on the side. Another one is Zamazenta and then Lunala. This core, it functions obviously different than Calyrex-Shadow Zamazenta. Like, obviously Lunala is the same typing, but this is going to primarily function differently just because Lunala could set up Trick Room, and you could run like Trick Room Pokemon as the next 4 like slots on this team with like maybe one other fast option just to be paired up with Zamazenta. The other thing is Lunala itself also gets access to Y-Guard, so if you want to free up Zamazenta, you can maybe take off its Y-Guard and then replace it with like Iron Defense to increase its damage output, or you could just keep the Y-Guard on it and then maybe not go Y-Guard on Lunala and then just do like Protect as like a last option, or do like a coverage move. Like, you could do like Moonblast, Moongeist Beam, Meteor Beam, and then go like Power Herb, You could go like a leftover set where you have like a Rillaboom on the team and then go Calm Mind instead of like Meteor Beam. So like there's a bunch of stuff you could do with this core. Obviously it's going to be slower paced than Zamazenta and Calyrex-Shadow, but it still I think would be pretty good, and I think it is worth noting and worth playing. The next core is one that I've actually been running a lot recently. It is Miraidon Lunala. So Miraidon Lunala, this core has actually been working out really, really well for me, just because one of the things that I've always really liked is like not only defensive teams, but I also like hybrid Trick Room teams. That's like the teams that was typically seen and used by RayRizzo, who's the greatest Pokemon player of all time, where he would use these hybrid Trick Room teams where he'll have like some sort of fast option that could switch out, and then he'll use like a Trick Room mode. So with Miraidon, obviously you could give it like Volt Switch, you could do a lot of damage with Hadron Engine, and it's electric terrain with like a choice specs, and then you could Volt Switch out and then set up Trick Room with like Lunala and then switch into something like Ursaluna, or you could switch into like another strong Pokemon like Iron Hands that could also do really well in Trick Room, and then it will also get the boost from Miraidon. So I think like this could be a really, really good combo as well. Another core that is, I think, also worth mentioning is Miraidon and Calyrex-Ice. So this functions kind of similar to Lunala Miraidon. Calyrex obviously could set up Trick Room as well, but I don't think that Calyrex covers Miraidon's weaknesses as well as Lunala, just because it doesn't get access to Y-Guard and it can't block Miraidon from getting hit by opposing Glacial Lance from opposing Calyrex. But the difference is Calyrex is overall just like a stronger Pokemon than Lunala, so even though I don't think they pair together as well, this just overall has a higher strength and higher ceiling than Lunala, and then also to add on top of that, you do have a special and physical attacker, whereas opposed to Lunala, Miraidon, it's just 2 special attackers, so that's another core that I think is worth noting. This one, actually, one of my friends has been playing a lot recently, is Terapagos. Which one? We'll do this one. Terapagos and then Calyrex-Shadow. This core also makes sense as well. Terapagos is weak to fighting types, but Calyrex-Shadow is a nice switch on those because it's immune due to the ghost type. The one issue is you do have 2 special attackers on this team, but I do think that this core could be really solid. Like, one of the things Calyrex-Shadow does struggle against is other teams that could set up like opposing rain or opposing terrain. So like against like Miraidon, obviously it can't stop the terrain, it can't stop the rain from Kyogre or the sun. But with Terapagos, if you Terra type it, then its ability actually gets rid of those, and then you could just kind of go nuts with Calyrex-Shadow. So that is another option for the team. I think that that core could also be really, really strong as well. Another really good core I think will be like Miraidon and Zacian. Zacian has fallen off since Sword and Shield. Like obviously it got not buffed, it got nerfed a huge amount. Its attack stat used to be 170, now it's 150, and Intrepid Sword only works once in a battle rather than like every time you switch in. But with that being said, I think these two have really, really nice type synergy. The one issue is obviously like you are weak to ground types, which is kind of a problem, but you do complete the Fairy Steel Dragon core and you get a physical attacker and a special attacker. Obviously this core would have to look out for Trick Room teams because both these Pokemon are really fast, so that would be like kind of another weakness in it, but you could just fill out the other slots in the team to kind of make up for those differences. So yeah, I think that core could be like pretty decent. Another one, this was actually really popular in Sword and Shield, is Kyogre and Zacian. I think these two really cover each other's weaknesses super nicely. Zacian beats Miraidon, which Kyogre struggles against unless you Terra type the Kyogre, and then Kyogre beats Sun teams, which Zacian struggles against a lot. This core, I honestly thought back in 2022 that this core was going to win Worlds. It ended up not winning, but it's still placed, I think, very highly. I think it got like top 4, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this core, it's really, really strong. The combination's really nice. You could also throw a Rillaboom on this team just to have more insurance against something like Miraidon, just in case like you lose Zacian. At least you could switch up the terrain with this, but yeah, like this core really, really strong. You have a physical attacker and special attacker, so that's also another really nice buff. This core I think is actually going to be really, really strong going into this one, is Lunala Groudon. Lunala Groudon, I mentioned it before, but it won Worlds back in 2019, and it also got second at Worlds in 2022, and then both years going into those formats, it was an extremely underrated pairing. Like, no one expected it to win in 2019, and then it did, and then, I mean, obviously, like, the Groudon then was Primal Groudon, which is stronger than this form of Groudon, but then people didn't expect it to do well in 2022, and then it got second at Worlds in 2022. So this core is definitely coming back. The one downside to Groudon is that it's not as consistent as like Caly-Ice, just because Precipice Blades does have low accuracy. But if you could set up a Trick Room with Lunala and then maybe set up like one Bulk Up with Groudon, you could be like in a really, really good spot. I think that this core is going to be probably overlooked again, but trust me, like look out for this thing because this could actually be really strong. So just be leery of that. But yeah, I think it is certainly worth a mention here. This core actually I think is very, very underexplored, and a lot of people have been ragging on it. I actually think Koraidon Ho-Oh could be pretty decent. I know a lot of people are right now probably sitting here like, what in the world is he talking about? Just listen to me for a sec before you get your pitchforks and everything. Ho-Oh in past years hasn't done well in other restricted formats, and I think the reason why it hasn't done well is not because like in of itself I think it's like a bad Pokemon, like it's got like decent stats and everything. It's the fact that like it paired very awkwardly on other teams. So like back in 2016, the restricted you typically would want to pair it with was like Primal Groudon, but the issue is Primal Groudon and Ho-Oh were both weak to water types. I know that Primal Groudon did have Desolate Land, which evaporated any water moves in the sun, but if you ran into a Kyogre and Rayquaza team, like you were kind of cooked, because they could just bring in the Kyogre and then just click Water Spout and then hard switch into Rayquaza, which had Airlock, and then you just lose both your Pokemon. And then the other thing, like it's speed tied with Groudon, which also was kind of an issue, so it made it like very awkward. And then like the other options for it was like back in 2019 it was Groudon again, but then there was other issues like it had then, like there was the introduction of new rock types like Stakataka and Nihilego, which gave it issues. And then in like the most recent format in Regulation G, again it had like a very awkward time being paired with a lot of stuff. Like you typically want to pair Ho-Oh with Sun teams, but like you can't really pair it with Groudon because again, like same weaknesses and then same speed stat. And then also the other option was you could pair Ho-Oh with Torkoal, but Torkoal has a hard time kind of keeping up in restricted formats. Not to say that like it won't find any success. I think it just won a regional recently in Europe, but the thing is it's just like it has a very awkward pairing with these other Sunsetters because they share the similar weaknesses, or the Sunsetter itself is weak, or they both have the same speed stat or whatever. But this time around, Ho actually has a good partner in Koraidon, just because Koraidon, not only is it like way faster than it, so like you don't have those awkward like speed ties or deciding which Pokemon's stronger, but they also share different weaknesses. Koraidon, it has the Dragon Fighting type, while Ho is Fire Flying, so they both actually pair very nicely defensively. And then the other thing is Ho-Oh's Sacred Fire could get boosted in the sun. I think that this is like the first time in ever that Ho-Oh actually could be like kind of decent, just because now it actually has a partner that it synergizes well with and that isn't in of itself like weak. Like Koraidon's pretty strong. So I figured it was worth a mention here. I haven't really tested out the idea, but like in my mind, in theory, it should work, but people have been ragging on this core. But honestly, I would say maybe take a second look at it before you make any judgments without trying it out yourself. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that in here. I think that is important to note. Staying on like the Koraidon thing, I think Koraidon and Caly-Shadow can be really, really strong together. Again, this kind of suffers with like the same weaknesses as Zacian and Miraidon, where like you have these two really fast Pokemon. So if you run into a Trick Room team, you could have a lot of issues. But the thing is, if you're looking to just like clear a field very quickly, these two could actually like blow up a team within like 3 turns. It's insane, just because Caly-Shadow with like its super high special attack stat and Astral Barrage, and then Koraidon just is a nuke and a half, just like Miraidon in of itself. So yeah, I think that this core is certainly worth a mention as well if you're looking for like a more hyper offensive like pairing. So yeah, I figured I'll mention that. The next core that I want to mention is Groudon and Caly-Shadow. This core I think could also be pretty good. This is similar to the Koraidon Caly-Shadow core, but Groudon obviously is slower and bulkier than Koraidon, so that I think is the benefit of maybe running it next to Caly-Shadow instead. The other thing is that with Groudon and Caly-Shadow, it's a physical attacker and then special attacker. I mean, that's the same as Koraidon and Caly-Shadow, but having the slower speed stat I think is a kind of a big deal, because Groudon, because of its speed stat, can function in Trick Room. So you could run like a Trick Room option on this team if you really want to. Maybe like a Farigiraf somewhere or whatever, but yeah, so you could do that. The other thing is I think also Groudon Caly-Shadow, if I'm not mistaken, I think it won an international title back in like 2022. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, I think in the past it had success, so like just keep an eye on it, just because if it did have past success, it is worth mentioning again, because you just never know. I think Kyogre and Calyrex-Ice could be really good. Oop, that's not where you type in Calyrex-Ice. This core, really, really strong. Kyogre protects Calyrex-Ice's weakness to fire types pretty well, and then Calyrex protects Kyogre's weakness to Miraidon also pretty well. You could also slap a Rillaboom on this team to help out with those Miraidon matchups, but yeah, these two really cover each other's weaknesses nicely. And then Caly-Ice, because it has access to Trick Room, you can make this like a slower, bulkier Kyogre, which is really cool as well. So yeah, I think that is worth a mention. Let's do Koraidon and Lunala. So this, again, is like, it's kind of like the same idea as the Caly-Shadow Koraidon core, but the difference is Lunala, like I mentioned before, can be a Trick Room setter. So if you just want to have that option on the team for something to have like a slower paced way of playing the game, then you could do that. I honestly think that the Lunala Koraidon core would probably be better than Koraidon Caly-Shadow, just because you don't want to have those two super fast restricteds on the team, just because, again, Trick Room can kind of blow you up. So this is another option as well if you want to like keep that same type combination, but having the Trick Room option. So yeah, I do think that is worth a mention. And then finally, I think Zamazenta and Kyogre is another thing to mention. Kyogre protects Zamazenta from fire-type moves, and then Zamazenta, it has the ability to beat a lot of the stuff that beats Kyogre. Like, Kyogre struggles against Rillaboom, but Zamazenta just crushes Rillaboom. And then if you do, like, Zamazenta with a Rillaboom on your own team, I keep mentioning, like, by the way, with me mentioning Rillaboom next to Kyogre, you probably should run those two together. Just an idea. But yeah, you could put Rillaboom on the team with Zamazenta to help out with the Miraidon matchup. So that's another thing. So these are the cores that like I kind of heavily looked at, and I think that could be pretty good. There's chances are I probably have missed a core, if I'm going to be very honest with you guys. There's a lot of different cores that work out very well in this format, just because there's so many options and so many good, strong pairings. But yeah, I would say like test out everything that I mentioned in this video. I know it was a very, very, very quick overview. I didn't really go into like the huge amount of weaknesses or the huge amount of strengths of each core. I just wanted to mention each one. But yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea of like what to maybe try out and what to look out for. With that being said, I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you all next time. Take care.